Everyone, welcome to eLearnChat, where you always learn something new. I'm Rick Zanotti, and I'm joined today by my good friend from, well, she's living in London area, just outside London. She is from Scotland, Lesley Price. She's joining us. She's with www.learnappeal.org.uk. And how are you, Lesley?
I'm very good. Very good, thanks, Rick. Trying to cope with all this shutdown, lockdown that we've
Yeah,
got, but you're the same in the States.
we're in the same boat. It's a sinking boat, but we're all in that same boat. And, and
Well,
joining us
no,
today is
no, we're,
also,
we're gonna we're gonna keep afloat.
we'll
We
get,
are
we'll,
going to keep
we're sort of
afloat.
semi-capsized now, but we'll hopefully make it back. There's
Yeah.
too many interests that don't want this to come back, so we'll see what happens. But anyway, we also have with us today Harold Muliati, who's usually running the video switcher, and he is, but he's also going to be demoing how to create interactive documents. That's, we always talk about e-learning, but part of that is digital learning. Everything, it encompasses a lot of different things, and you can have documents and other means of communication to train people. Here we go. This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation. Digital learning development, media development, corporate video, management consulting, and more. Visit us at www.relate.com. Thanks. And we are back. There's Harold. And before we start, we'd like to give a shout out to a very cool person out of the UK. He is Captain Tom Moore. Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about Captain Moore, Lesley.
Oh, well, I don't know a great deal about him, but he has become quite a character in the UK. He fought in the Second War. He's almost 100. He's 100 in a couple of weeks. And he decided he wanted to raise money for not the health service as such, but for the health service charities, NHS charities. So all the charities that, are where, you've got dependent people who are absolutely desperate for help and support. And he decided he was going to, before his 100th birthday, he was going to do 100 laps of his garden, and he set a target of £1,000. And he has now raised, in the last few weeks, he's raised over £14 million. And a
Amazing.
lot of money has actually come from, the reason I wanted to mention it today is to also to say thank you to all of the people over the world who actually watch this, including people in the US, because the US have also been donating to Captain Tom.
That's great. You know what? All we can say is Captain Tom, you rock. He's a rock star. So
Yeah.
very
And I
good,
say
very
we can put
good.
up, Harold will put the link, as he always says, at the bottom afterwards, so that if people do want to donate to Captain Tom Moore, that they can do so. But he's just an incredible man with just such passion.
And by the way, if you think one person can't move the world, think again. It's amazing the
Yeah.
influence we can sometimes have over a lot of different things. Here's one guy, an ex-veteran from a long time ago, almost 100 years old. He's going to do 100 laps. And you know
He's done
what?
it. He did it today.
Oh, he did do it today.
Yeah, he finished it
Ah,
today, even before his 100th birthday, and he's now saying he's not going to stop walking until the money stops. So he's going to just
oh,
keep
great.
going.
You know what? You got to love the guy. It's
Yeah,
it's people like him that make a difference in this world. I mean, a real
yeah,
difference. So if you think you
yeah,
can't make any difference, think again. Think about what you
yeah,
do and the people. Even if you only influence a couple of people for good, you've done something good.
yeah.
It's not just hanging out there and doing nothing, scratching your butt, going, "What itches?" There's a lot you can do. And it starts with
And I
your
think that
family. It starts with your neighborhood. It starts with a community. And then think beyond that. It's amazing what people can do
And
if
I
they
think
focus.
what's interesting about Captain Tom, when you think, you know, for most of his life, the technology that we know today didn't exist.
Mm-mm.
It just didn't exist.
Yep.
And yet he has now been on not just UK TV, UK radio. He's been on TV and radio all over the world. And also what he's doing has created such awareness online.
I know,
So
it's amazing.
social media and online. So we're fortunate in his situation. It's for a very positive thing. And I
Yeah.
think that just goes to show in a time where we're in total lockdown,
Mm-hmm.
all over the world, how online can make a huge difference.
It can. It
Oh
can.
yeah.
And by the way, just a quick warning to people. When you donate to charities, find out who really owns the charities and find out where the money goes, because
Yeah.
many charities are not really charities. They're scams. They keep 96% of the money and donate 4%, which is all they have to do legally. Think of ex-presidents, think of our actors and actresses and others who are already pretty rich and famous. They're keeping the money. It's not going to what you think. So if you're going to donate to charities, find good ones. Find charities that actually give the money to where it's supposed to
Yeah.
go. Yes, there are operating expenses, but they're not 96% of the money. Those are scams.
The other thing, Rick, what's quite interesting, an announcement was made on the news today because the charity that Captain Tom is using, the platform he's using, normally would make quite a lot of money from donations, and the platform have donated today a huge amount of money to the charity because
Okay.
they said they didn't feel it was right or appropriate for them to make money from this initiative.
Good.
Yeah, that one I think it's called Just Giving.
Yeah, just
Yes,
giving.
Just Giving.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
in many
And
cases, with a lot of these places, it's just taking. So be careful. That's it.
yeah,
Just be careful.
yeah. But no, this one actually, announced today
Yeah.
that I think they donated, I think it was at least £100,000 to
That's good.
give to the charities, and the charities are all bona fide NHS related charities that are really charities.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, anyway, let's start
Anyway,
with the
back
show
to the
today.
show.
Yeah, but that's what Captain Tom Moore. He's one of those examples of what you can do. Look at his age; he hasn't given up. He's still going, and that's beautiful. But anyway, today we wanted to talk about something that we really haven't talked about in all these years. It's like almost 11 years we've been doing this show, and that is using other tools besides authoring tools for training, or at least for documentation, or for things that can be a little more interactive, a little more than just a read document, something that you can do some stuff with that could aid in the training process or other processes within your company, organization, agency, whatever it might be. So Harold and I were talking about what to do with PDFs and making them interactive, and a lot of the interactivity in the PDFs is gone because Flash will no longer be supported this year. Some of the stuff was already taken out of the PDFs. Some of it doesn't work that well anymore, and Flash is basically bye-bye. So there are other things, though, that you can do to make a PDF interactive, as a typical example of a good document that can be interactive. And that's by using InDesign, which is the publishing tool. Was at one point was called PageMaker, then it got redone and recreated as InDesign. So it's a very popular tool among publishers and everything else. And it can make interactive EPUBs. EPUB document format is used by many, many readers or text readers. And it comes built into Windows, Mac devices. So EPUB is very popular. You can create interactive documents with EPUB using InDesign, but you can also create Acrobat PDFs with using InDesign. You can create Kindle books with InDesign. So there's a lot of things you can do through InDesign. And they've added enough interactivity to make it a little bit more fun and a little bit more interesting. So Harold's going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing with that. And I think he used our website. Well, it's kind of an example because we were just kind of taking some things we had, doing some tests to see what was and what isn't supported right now. We ran into a couple little problems, but I think we fixed some of them as we went. Harold, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I'll show the PDF that we made as a test, and while there, as Rick mentioned, there are many limitations to it, especially more now that Flash is reaching end of life. There are certain things you can still do with interactive PDF, and it might be a little more than you typically expect from just a PDF document. And you can do things like showing and hiding things, which it's sort of based on PDF's ability to create forms and stuff like that. So there is a little bit you can do with that, and you can navigate around, go to different pages. You can embed certain types of media. For example, you can put in video and audio. You can't put in animations anymore, as those were Flash based.
We specialize in digital learning. In particular, we use all the major authoring tools like Adobe Captivate, Articulate Storyline, Trivansis Lectora, and others. We can also create interactive documents or other documentation for your training needs.
So you can have audio clips like that. You can, again, you can put in different, you can put in most types of images. We found that animated GIFs don't seem to work anymore. You can put in videos. And actually, something that Lesley Price brought up before the show, however, is that it's not necessarily, PDFs aren't really responsive. They won't change their aspect ratio and that sort of thing based on device. So you will typically be designing a PDF just for a certain device type, like tablet or desktop or something like that. And that you won't be able to necessarily move things around responsively.
Yeah, as long as you develop your...
It wasn't. It's not that you can't do it. It's just you need to have a certain skill with, you need to be able to move your hand, your finger, so hold the device and move everything around as you're doing it. And, therefore, how many of us, if I'm looking at a PDF device, if I'm looking at a PDF document, if I'm just sitting on my own, that's fine. I can do all kinds of things with that PDF. But if I was talking to you here, because I'm using a headset and a microphone, I could be using my phone and scanning through everything. But if I'm actually physically on the phone to someone, or if I'm also having to use a keyboard, so use my fingers on the keyboard and also look at the device where the document is, you just can't do that. So there's therefore a limit to its interactivity because it's, at the moment, it's not device responsive. I really, really wish that it were device responsive, but at the moment, it's not.
Yeah, they probably have to write quite a bit of code to make it responsive right now.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. They might. You never know. Or they'll come up with something new. Adobe seems to be getting rid of products more than adding them, so we're trying to figure out what are they doing. But anyway, go ahead, Harold.
I would almost say that technology-wise, with things, for example, like the interactive PDF that we have here, it's almost like they're, in a lot of cases, seem to be building the bridge as they cross it. It's, they have things like, there are things that they could do with their current technology. They probably could have animations and all that sort of thing in a Adobe PDF, but they just haven't yet implemented a way to do certain things without using Flash. They're relying on Flash while also saying it's going to go away. So there's certain things that they just basically don't let you do. And I guess next we can talk about how putting this together works in InDesign, and you can also do certain things like this in Acrobat, but it works slightly differently, and not all the things will work as well. And
give us an example then, Harold. Give us an example, my lovely.
Yeah, of course. For example, well, I played the video over there in the PDF as an example, and in InDesign you can put in videos, you can insert videos somewhat easily. Let me go over to it. You basically just kind of drag them in here. Let me drag one in as an example. And
so it's like drag and drop?
Yeah, you can basically drag and drop videos in, and it's not too hard in InDesign. Here, let me take a video and just plop it in there. However, in Acrobat, when you try to do that, like Acrobat does have a way to, and actually let me switch over to it. Acrobat has a way to put in videos and audio. They refer to it as rich media in there. However, it tries to do it using Adobe Flash still, so that's not going to quite work because InDesign won't necessarily put it in using a Flash implementation, which is not going to work by the end of this year. So if I try to add a video using Adobe PDF here, then it's going to
do either of you guys know why they stopped Flash?
Yeah, it had to do with complete and total retardation on the part of Steve Jobs and Shantanu Narayan. Steve Jobs being with Apple, and Shantanu...
Oops. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Yeah. And Shantanu Narayan, the CEO now of Adobe, had a big fight about the iPhone, which was slow, and he claimed that Flash made it slower. But it was all BS because all of the games, or a large majority of the games on iPhone from the beginning, were done in Flash. Angry Birds, anyone? Angry Birds was all Flash. Yeah. And so it was a made-up argument by two ingrates because Steve Jobs became popular with Apple because of Adobe, and Adobe became popular because of Apple. So between the two of them, they're both ingrates. And one's gone and the other one is still there, but they killed a very good platform which was ubiquitous on the web, and it made development so easy because if you could develop in Flash, you never had to worry about your browser compatibility like we do now. Yeah. So this is where we are.
I just wondered because I didn't know the background behind it.
Yeah, it was very petty.
I've just always found it very puzzling because some technologies, as obviously I've been using technology for quite a long time, and some technology you use, you can actually see, oh, this isn't working the way that it used to, or this isn't actually doing a good job anymore. But I never actually felt that with Flash.
No, Flash was good.
It never seemed to me that Flash was actually failing, in inverted commas.
It wasn't. It wasn't. It was doing very, very well. And Flash, it was really just a competition between two people who had different ideas. Steve Jobs attacked Adobe pretty hard on Flash, and all he was doing was hiding the fact that the iPhone was slow. It was slow. It was a very slow chip back then. And as a result, but again, all the games ran on it with no problems. So it was a non-argument that both of them kind of got into, and eventually Adobe decides to kill Flash, which was stupid. Sorry, it was just very dumb, because it was a very good platform, and they had so much invested in it, and they just let it go.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that replaced it. So we're stuck now with a lot of compatibility issues with all e-learning tools that generate HTML or Flash, because the browsers are not consistent. There's not one browser that renders HTML5 or HTML for that matter exactly the way the other browser does. There's dozens of browsers. None of them render the same way. So we have a lot of issues.
There's a big gap there for somebody wanting to earn some money.
If they could come up with a new Flash. And Flash had it. They were everywhere. They were incorporated in every single browser. So it was just a foolish thing all the way around. I would have said screw Apple. Personally, they don't have enough computers to warrant that kind of behavior. And unfortunately, that's what happened. And mind you, by the way, before I get Apple haters, I have 2 Apple iMacs, so leave me alone. I use them day to day.
No, I do have an iPad, but I'm afraid
I've got iPads.
I'm afraid I'm an Android user.
Yeah, I prefer Android too. I had my iPhone. I had 4 iPhones when they first came out, the first 4 up to the 4S. Then I got fed up with I have big hands, little teeny weeny phones. And then I went to Android, and then last year, for 4 months, almost 4 months, I tried going back to the Apple iPhone, the what was it called? The 11 or 12 or whatever the brand.
the 11 Max or something like that.
Pro Max or whatever, the big one. And it was nice. I gave it to my wife. She likes it now, and I went back to my Note 10 Plus.
You gave it to the other Lesley.
Yeah, she took it.
You gave it to the other Lesley.
Yeah, and she took it, and she doesn't like it much, but she doesn't dislike it. Our daughter has an iPhone, so they do FaceTime a lot together. That's the only thing that's kind of cool. Other than that, I could care less. I prefer my Android too. It's more flexible.
Well, when I was looking at phones, and I'm going back to the early 2000s when people when I was working, I had a BlackBerry because that was what we had. That's what our government, and I worked for UK government, and the government issued us with BlackBerries. And when I was looking for something for myself, because I worked in the government technology agency, I worked with an awful lot of people who were very, very, very IT literate. And it was them that said to me, go Android. Definitely Android, because in the long term, you will end up having far more control than you would do if you went to Apple.
You do. You have a lot more choice. Yeah.
So that's what I was told by the people that I worked with. So ever since then, I've had an Android phone, always. Different brand names, different makes, but always Android, because that was what the people who were really working at grassroots level said to me I should use, because they said, if you want control, Lesley, and we know you like to have control, we know you, we work with you, we know what you're like, go Android.
Yep.
And
So
I
I
guess
did.
that is part of the thing with the Android. You can have different brands of phones, whereas
That's true.
Yeah.
And you're not stuck with what somebody decides is going to be the only way you look at things. And I didn't care for that.
So what about this InDesign? Does it work on all kinds of phones, all kinds of devices?
It does. It does.
Yeah,
But not for PDF.
Yeah, as we said before, you would pretty much have to design the PDF for it, whichever
Yeah.
specific type of device that you're going to put it on.
Yeah. So
So
were you done with the?
so how would you use it? How would you use it then? If you were, like at the moment, we're all in lockdown, this crazy lockdown that we're in. So what would be the best way for an organization to use it?
Well, really, I would say that it's probably suited, other than the normal design stuff, it's used for more making kind of reference material with light training content. Like it'll do a little more than just making PDFs as reference material, but that's kind of the base of it. Its advantage is that when you make PDFs and stuff with it, then it's going to be very searchable. So that's why as reference material, then it'll be, compared to another kind of training course or something like that, you'll very easily be able to put in like a table of contents. They'll be able to search through the whole document and just instantly get to whatever thing they're trying to find in it. And like we said, you can do a little more things like navigation and stuff like that in there, but probably primarily as a kind of reference or supplemental material that would.
Yeah, or let's say you have a lot of materials already created that may be kind of training material or training manuals, excuse me, that you haven't yet put up into more of an e-learning kind of course. You could, with some very small effort, add some interactivity, add some voiceover, add some videos, and then disseminate that to the remote workers. So that's something you could do right now.
Can I be really awkward, Harold, and ask you to show us what a blank looks like? So what does it look like from scratch? So when you start off, so at the moment you're showing us that, and it's got, Relate Management Consulting. But if I was starting from the very beginning, what would it look like?
That's
a good question. I mean,
I'm sorry.
You basically start off with a blank page, and you would just be starting off. I suppose if you wanted it to be screen size, then you would just start it off at.
Well, let's take it also from a step before that. So we're setting up our settings. If you have a blank page, you have got to set up your master pages, which again, the master pages are like master slides in PowerPoint. They give you form and function to the pages, and you can have multiple master pages that you can apply. And then you would start bringing in text from other sources. They could be Word. You could actually type it in here too. And then start formatting. You could put graphics. You can put other elements into this. So you do setup first. There's a lot of setup to do to get a document looking the way you want. You decide if you want single-sided pages, double-sided pages. How do you have chapters, sections? How are you building this out? So that's your upfront design kind of approach. Once you have your design done, then you start adding your content, whether it's created in other applications. You can create a certain amount of things here, like simple graphics, or maybe you can also type in text. You could do that within InDesign. And then from there...
So what you're saying, Rick, sorry to interrupt. So what you're saying is within that double page, you can cut and paste from other documents.
Yeah, if you have, for example, text, if you've got a lot of Word text, you can literally put it on one page and it'll start flowing to every other page until it ends. So you can make it do that. And it's really nice for that. If you've got long documents and you haven't taken them out of Word, you can put them into InDesign, format them differently, and it'll do flowing of columns. You could flow to one column only. You can flow to 3 columns, depending on how you set up your documents. And very powerful for that. And if you insert things in the middle of something, it will create the continuous flow anyway around the objects.
Oh, okay.
And as Rick...
sorry to be going back to basics.
Oh no,
but
that's
I'm afraid I like to see how it's done from the beginning.
It's good question. And that's why I didn't want to put Harold on the spot to have to create a whole thing, because there's a lot of work to create the initial look and feel. I think in this case, I'm not even sure. Were you using master pages?
Yeah,
you are.
As Rick was mentioning master pages, and you can as you can see here, I have a few different master pages, so I can just add in, add in a page, and then it'll have
Oh, okay.
it'll have stuff
Right.
already. So once you kind of make the master page, you can just base your subsequent pages on that, and that cuts down on the amount of work you have to do. So for people that are more used to like PowerPoint or authoring tools, that'll be something that's pretty familiar, and it has things like you can have defined styles for visual elements and objects and stuff like that. So I have these different styles
I'm
for.
watching what you're doing. You're changing text size. You're changing color.
Yeah, and if you
changing
wanted
background.
to say I wanted to change every button that looks like this, then I would just have to change it the one time, give it an ugly color, and
No,
then
but it's from my perspective, it's just I'm trying to look at how easy it is for somebody who's never done anything like this before to learn to use it.
It does require a bit of a learning curve. It's not an instant, oh, hey, I'm developing something and here we are. There is a learning curve, but it's not horrible.
Yeah.
If you were using FrameMaker, for example, from Adobe, that's much more complex. And it's a very powerful product, but it's a more complex desktop publisher geared towards technical documentation. So it's a little bit different. This is a general multi-purpose desktop publishing tool, which can publish to the web. It can publish to online, to print, and it can do a lot of different things. And again, the older program this emanated from was PageMaker, the old Aldous PageMaker, which Adobe acquired, and then this became the later iteration of PageMaker, and they added a lot more functionality. And what Harold was talking about, when you have, for example, media elements or you have buttons, with those buttons you can create interactivity. There's about 10 or 20 things you can do with each button as far as hiding, showing, launching, doing certain things. So that's how you would show, like, for example, when you show a video, Harold.
Just interrupt there.
Yeah.
The reason I'm asking is because in this crazy environment we're in with COVID, so many people who have never done anything like this before in their lives are now having to go on a very, very, very steep learning curve.
Yep.
True, yeah.
And it is not only the fact that people are starting to realize that working remotely isn't for everyone, and it's not that easy. No, it's a whole new world.
Yeah. Oh, what were you asking me about video just now?
For example, to show video, like you had a video of me talking about something. To show a video. Did you put that in InDesign or in the PDF directly?
So that was in InDesign. As I mentioned earlier, inserting videos in Acrobat doesn't quite work properly right now because they were doing it via Flash. Yep. Whereas with InDesign, you put them in and usually just have to put like a button to tell it to play or something like that.
So how do we get our name? Well, that's an interesting story in and of itself. My first company name was called Zsoft Consulting. Z for Zanotti, Soft for software development, which is what I used to do in those days, and actually still do today to a certain level. I would go into Egghead Software or Software, etc., all the software places of that day, and they would go.
When it comes to video, one of the things you have to actually keep in mind with PDF is that it'll embed all of these video files and stuff like that in the PDF file itself, so you have to make sure not to make your file get too large.
Microsoft Paint or Paintbrush, one of those.
That's the other thing I was going to say.
And I said, no, that's not it. But they didn't believe me, so they kept treating me very nice every time I went to an Egghead or somewhere. So how do we get our name? Well,
But anyway, so that's how you
because file size nowadays, when even more so when everybody's doing stuff online, everybody's doing things remotely, people's inboxes are getting totally and utterly overloaded.
Yep.
I'm sure you're finding it. Your inbox gets overloaded.
All I know is
so you have to think about file size as well.
Oh, believe me, you know what? I get an email more than anything else every single freaking day. I get marketing emails from marketing companies saying, Rick, can I call you? Rick, would you like to have time for a call? Rick, it's nonstop. I get probably 20 to 50 a day, every single day of people. Can I call you? Can I set up an appointment? Can I do this? Is the current meme. You have to call someone. You have to set up an appointment. And it's all lead generation. And I love the ones where I get 3 or 4 a day from the same company with different people. Same exact message. And you just go, oh, it never ends. And it's hard to get rid of all of them because they're just, it's always a new ID. And they're just spammers.
But file size then does become an issue because
It
I
does.
know when I'm sending documents, depending on the company I'm sending the document to, it will sometimes say, sorry, this attachment is too large.
Right. So it's usually somewhere, most companies go anywhere from 2 megabytes to 10 to 20. 20 is usually, if you're a manager, you might get more. But usually 2 to 10 megabytes is about the limit of an attachment in most places. Because otherwise people would be sending cartoons and jokes and videos all day long. And you'd run out of space. So that's not a good thing.
Yeah. And I think we kind of inadvertently brought up one of the things that could be an advantage with using PDFs as sort of light training or training supplemental is that it's all contained in one file. You make it and it just all gets embedded into one PDF file. So that can, depending on how you're deploying stuff, that can simplify things somewhat. Just that it's not like that's part of the thing with HTML5 packages, for example. Sometimes it gets a little messy just because you have so many files just for one thing.
Well, anyway, I think that's about it.
Sounds really interesting. Interesting.
And it's funny because we've done a lot of PDFs before. We've used InDesign many, many times throughout the years, but we haven't used it a lot in the last, let's say, couple of years. And we just kind of said, what can we do with this right now? And we can do less than we used to because of Flash, but there's still things that you can do that can be pretty interesting.
You need to go back to your software design, Rick.
That's right. Have some fun.
You could be the next, in inverted commas, flasher.
Oh, flasher. Yes. And I have a trench coat, so.
Oh, absolutely. And a hat, and a fedora hat, and a pair of welly boots.
That's right. Oh, God. Well, anyway, with that, I guess we are out of time. And that was fun. It was just something a little bit different. We haven't really talked about desktop publishing as an aid to training or anything else we're going to do. And again, we didn't really show a training application. We really just showed more of how you could make an interactive brochure, if you will. But we could make training out of this, and you could add training elements and things and make it somewhat interactive, even with forms and everything else. But it is an interesting tool. It's one tool that is available that hasn't been killed yet, though it has been reduced a little bit in functionality because of Flash. So we'll see what happens in the future with that. And anyway, we all have to just sit down, hold on tight, and hope that this is over pretty soon. We've been lucky. We're actually at work. There aren't that many of us in this particular office, so we're okay. And I actually don't know. I know one person who actually doesn't have COVID but is living near people with COVID. So I haven't met anybody. We haven't heard anybody here who has it yet, though there have been very few cases in our area. But, it's mostly like a flu for most people. Some old people are getting it very, very hard. Yeah.
Unfortunately, 2 of my daughter's friends have had it, and 2 of my sister's friends have had it. And one was, very, very seriously ill, but she's now out of hospital.
That's good.
My
mom had it in December.
Really?
Oh, we're convinced it was because we thought it was just a flu. No, she probably had COVID because of the high fever, and it took her about a month to get rid of the gurgle in her throat. And my mom was 85 at the time. So very possible because it's been here in the States since probably October, November.
Gosh.
Nobody talked about it.
Yeah.
So, and then for whatever reason, we decided to talk about it. So I don't know. What we're seeing now is the end of it, not the beginning of
Hope
it.
so.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. Anyway, Lesley, good to see you again. And
Yeah, you
next
too.
week we will probably have a guest again, but we thought this was something different, so we decided to go with this. And we look forward to, if anybody has any questions, just put them down in the comments below, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Oh, subscribe, by the way, while you're at it, because we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, only because I think YouTube likes you better when you have at least 1,000, or I think we're at 700 something, maybe 800. So please subscribe. If you're a first-time viewer, subscribe. We'll bother you for the rest of your life with these. But
What we need to do is get Captain Tom on.
hey, if you can get him on, sure, that'd be fun.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
Maybe
very
him and his
much.
daughter would come on. That'd be cool.
But it's, as I say, for those of you viewing all over the world, check out, Captain Tom on Just Giving.
Yep, that's great. Anyway, have a good one, everyone. We will see you next week
You
on
too.
eLearnChat.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
guys.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, Lesley. And bye.
Bye.
Here we go.
And it's a wrap.